Today we're diving into the fascinating geography of the U.S. West Coast, where millions of people reside from sunny Southern California all the way up to the lush Pacific Northwest. But here's the kicker. Right in the middle of this bustling coastline lies a huge stretch that's eerily empty. Think about it. On one end, you've got the vibrant cities of San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Sacramento, buzzing with over 50 million folks combined. Then, skip up north to Portland and Seattle, where even more people call home. But in between, it's like a ghost town. So, what gives? Why isn't this middle section teeming with life like its neighbors? Let's find out. When most folks think about the West Coast, it's usually the bustling tech hub of the Bay Area or the rainy cityscape of Seattle that comes to mind, or maybe the sunny shores of Southern California or the quirky vibe of Portland, Oregon. But nestled right in between these well-known areas is a stunning stretch of land that often flies under the radar: the northern part of California and the southern part of Oregon, also known as the state of Jefferson. We'll dig into that in a bit. Let's take a scenic tour through this region, starting from the southern end of the empty West. The California coast is famous for its rugged beauty, boasting rocky cliffs, golden beaches, and vast marine ecosystems. But it's not just about the coastline. This area is also home to expansive forests like the Tahoe National Forest, Trinity National Forest, and more. These forests are like skyscrapers, housing some of the tallest and oldest trees on the planet. And jutting out from these forested landscapes are the southern tips of the Cascade and Sierra Nevada mountain ranges. Picture perfect peaks like Mount Shasta, standing tall at a whopping 14,179 feet. But here's a fun fact. While Mount Shasta's majestic beauty draws tourists year-round, it's also closely monitored by the U.S. Geological Survey due to its volcanic activity, earning it a spot on the high threat list for potential eruptions. Heading north into southern Oregon, we find a region that often plays second fiddle to its northern neighbor, but packs its own geographic punch. The Oregon coast is a stunning blend of sandy shores, towering sea stacks, and dramatic cliffs that'll take your breath away. Inland, the Rogue Valley offers a different kind of beauty, with fertile lands known for their agriculture. Think vineyards and wineries galore. And let's not forget about Crater Lake, a true gem nestled in the Cascade Mountains. This deep blue wonder is the deepest lake in the US and the second deepest in North America, formed over millennia by the collapse of Mount Mazama. And last but not least, let's talk about the eastern boundary of this empty West, which is marked by the Great Basin, a vast high desert landscape that's like its own little world. Here, you'll find a fascinating array of plant and animal species that have adapted to the harsh desert environment. It's a far cry from the lush forests and coastal vibes of southern Oregon and northern California, sharing more in common with the arid landscapes of Nevada. Now, what makes this empty West so captivating is its unique geography. But here's the kicker. This same uniqueness also makes it pretty darn tricky to build big cities or bustling towns. And that's what we're here to unpack. Why has this region remained relatively sparsely populated, both historically and in modern times? Back in the early 1800s, the United States was still pretty much sticking to the eastern side of the continent. But then came the Louisiana Purchase of 1803, a game changer that tacked on a whopping 828,000 square miles to the nation's territory. Suddenly, heading west was all the rage. This massive acquisition lit a fire under explorers like Lewis and Clark, who set out to scope out these new lands and see what all the fuss was about. And boy, did they find some gems. Picture lush, fertile lands just waiting to be settled, promising new opportunities and a fresh start. Before you knew it, pioneers were packing up their wagons and hitting the Oregon Trail, a grueling 2,000-mile journey from Missouri to Oregon. What made Oregon so enticing, you ask? Well, let me tell you about the Missoula floods. These epic natural events from thousands of years ago basically turned the Willamette Valley into a paradise for farmers. With each flood, layers of rich soil were deposited, creating one of the most fertile agricultural hubs around. And with the mighty Columbia River snaking through the Willamette Valley, shipping out all those delicious crops to the rest of the world was a breeze. So yeah, when it came to the empty West, It wasn't long before folks started flocking there in droves, ready to make their mark on the frontier. Now, before we continue our journey through the fascinating geography of the US West Coast, I've got a little request. If you're enjoying this exploration of the empty West and all its quirks, do us a solid favor. Hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more captivating content like this. Between 1841 and 1869, the Oregon Trail was like the interstate highway of the West, with over 400,000 settlers, miners, farmers, and ranchers hitching their wagons and heading westward for greener pastures. But then came the big kahuna, the California gold rush of 1848. Picture this. News of gold nuggets the size of your fist just lying around waiting to be scooped up spread like wildfire, drawing in an estimated 300,000 fortune seekers to Northern California. Talk about a population explosion! San Francisco went from a sleepy little hamlet of 200 folks in 1846 to a bustling metropolis of 36,000 by 1852. But let's be real, crossing the country in search of gold or new opportunities wasn't exactly a walk in the park. So, to make things a bit easier and safer, the Transcontinental Railroad came chugging along between 1863 and 1869. This engineering marvel connected the Eastern Rail network with the Pacific coast at San Francisco, basically stitching the country together and paving the way for even more folks to head west. And just like that, the West wasn't so empty anymore. With the Oregon Trail, the Gold Rush, and the Transcontinental Railroad all playing their parts, the Wild West became a bustling frontier, ripe for exploration and settlement. The Homestead Act of 1862, the cherry on top of the westward expansion sundae. This little gem basically said, "Hey, want a piece of land? Sure thing." Settlers were offered a sweet deal. 160 acres of public land practically for free, as long as they promised to build a home and start farming. And boy, did folks jump on that opportunity. By the time 1934 rolled around, a whopping 270 million acres of land had changed hands, mostly in the western states. It was like a real estate free-for-all. But here's the thing. While the promise of free land was enticing, not all areas were created equal. Sure, the Oregon Trail and the lush Columbia River drew settlers up north, while the glittering allure of gold turned San Francisco into a magnet for fortune seekers. But that vast expanse in between? Not so much. See, without a big draw like gold or prime farmland, growth in this middle region was kinda sluggish compared to its neighbors. Sure, there were some folks who ventured into the empty West, but it just didn't have the same pull as the bustling cities or fertile valleys nearby. So while the Homestead Act fueled westward expansion, not every corner of the West saw the same level of action. But hey, that's the beauty of history. It's full of twists, turns, and surprises around every corner. Today, when you look at the empty West, it's still one of the least populated areas in the country, and a big part of that boils down to geography. You see, there's this movement that's been brewing for decades, centered around a region some folks call the long-desired 51st state of Jefferson. Back in the early 1940s, residents in several counties spanning Northern California and Southern Oregon had this wild idea. Let's make our own state. Why?
Their allegiance was always in question. They resented paying taxes, and so they would constantly change the state lines. And they would say, no, we're in Southern Oregon, we're in California, no. And so they were constantly battling over which taxes they were going to pay and if they were going to pay taxes.
Well, they felt kind of neglected by their state governments and like they were getting the short end of the stick compared to their urban counterparts. So they rallied together and named their would-be state Jefferson, in honor of Thomas Jefferson, the big cheese who championed rural independence and agrarian democracy. They even went as far as picking out a governor and designing a snazzy flag with 2 X's, symbolizing their double cross by the capitals in Salem and Sacramento. Unfortunately, World War II put a pause on their plans, and while the idea never completely fizzled out, it sort of simmered on the back burner for a while. Fast forward to today, and the push for the state of Jefferson is making a comeback. Proponents argue that rural communities like theirs aren't getting a fair shake in state politics, especially when it comes to stuff like land use, taxes, and managing natural resources.
We'll create a geopolitical area that represents all the people of northern rural California, and we will be able to use the 10th Amendment to stop federal intervention in negative ways into our life.
There would be less tax and certainly less regulation and less impact of the agency and having more states' rights.
Now, creating a whole new state isn't exactly a walk in the park. You need approval from the state legislature and Congress. And even then, not everyone in the region is on board with the whole Jefferson statehood idea. But despite the challenges, the dream lives on. You see, despite its sparse population and rugged terrain, there's something about the empty West that's got a hold on folks. And sure, it might not have the flashy cities or fertile valleys of its neighbors, but for the people who call it home, that's part of the appeal. It's a land of wide open spaces and untamed beauty, where the pioneer spirit still thrives. So yeah, while the idea of a 51st state might seem like a long shot, for the folks in the empty West, it's a dream worth chasing. And who knows, maybe one day their state of Jefferson will become more than just a state of mind. If you're as captivated by the empty West as we are, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more intriguing explorations. Now, here's a question for you. What aspect of the US West Coast geography surprises you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going.